It is Monday. It is 5 things from week 15. And I would like to acknowledge that this NFL season, the last 4 weeks, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks, has been an absolute heater. This is incredible how special this league has been, the outcomes, Saturday alone, the endings. But before we get into any of these, Kyle, just a mental health check with you. What's going on, buddy?
Yeah, this isn't a filter, actually. I just have no color left in my world after yesterday. That was quite awful.
For those listening, Kyle's filter today's kind of like
sepia, maybe. Yeah,
it's the old-timey movie filter. Yeah. It's sort of washed out in this kind of sandy brown.
It's sort of how I'm seeing life the last 12 hours.
You look terrible.
Yeah, I feel terrible. Yeah. And it was like perfect. I mean, I went from like I guess it just was sort of like one of those what the fuck happened. It wasn't even like a no. It was just over like that. I mean, the terrible Mac Jones tackle. You see Brandon Bolden and Chandler Jones, two former Patriots, both of whom I miss, ending the game for us. It was just it's terrible. I don't want to get into X's and O's, but that was ugly. I was at Frolic for that, and then I zoomed home to try to get all ready to work in like 5 hours after that. But that was probably one of the saddest moments of the season for me.
Okay. Well, we're going to get to it because we're bringing back the Tom Bill legacy rankings.
Oh, good.
All right. Let's start with number one. I'm going to go back to Saturday. Miami going into Buffalo. We knew what the weather was. We knew what the expectations were. We expected, I think a lot of us expected, I think this is going to be a continuation of the Miami decline and therefore the Tua decline. I think that's what a lot of us were waiting for. I don't know that we were rooting for it. It just kind of felt like, all right, enough of this Miami story. At least that's what it felt like for me. It felt like that was kind of the collective NFL part of it. And you can recuse yourself if you're a fan of either of those teams. I think the neutral part of us was just looking into this being like, I think we're going to get some big Miami correction. Looking at the 5-game win streak prior to this 3-game losing streak for Miami, wins against Pittsburgh, Detroit, who I actually kind of like now, Chicago, Cleveland, Houston. That's 4 last place teams, depending on what you want to do with Pittsburgh or Cleveland, both at 6 and 8. But that's not what we got. Okay? That's not what we got. That was a perception win for the Miami Dolphins. I know it's not what you want to hear. It's still an L. It's still 3 losses in a row. That felt like a perception win. Sometimes I'm like that. Sometimes teams that are losing, I go, you know what? I kind of like that team. Sometimes there are teams that are winning that I'm like, you know what? I don't really see it, even though they're winning games. So with Miami these last few weeks, I was like, here we go. I liked what they did. I liked that they went into Buffalo against a team that's statistically one of the better defenses in the NFL, a Miami team that couldn't run the football coming in, 29th in yards per game, 25th in yards per carry, go 25 for 188, 7.5 yards per carry. Mostert goes for 136. Tua was good enough. I still think he has a really lucky run of should-be picks. We can look that stat up a little bit later, but they were up 29-21 at Buffalo. The snow's coming down. It's freezing cold. The weather for the start of the game wasn't as bad as everybody thought it was going to be. The snowballs all being part of it. But being up 29-21 is against Josh Allen. The last 2 Buffalo possessions, they go 161 yards, win it on a field goal, MVP conversation. I think that if Allen were to win it, that's the kind of stuff that we need to remind ourselves of what the recency bias can do to us and how this plays out, where I know I've talked about Hurts. Mahomes is always lingering. Allen, but, keep track of those. Keep track of those MVP moments where it's like, hey, you have to figure out a way to go ahead and do this and bring us back on your own. And that's what they were able to do. Buffalo's the 1 seed. They and Philly are the only teams without a what the hell happened loss. Philly, the Washington game, not worried about it. Washington's better, as we've seen, even though they lost last night to the Giants. Tough one for Commanders fans. Kansas City's they almost added another one to their Indy loss by having to beat Houston in overtime. But Miami's the 7 seed this morning, but I actually feel better about them. And a little aside there, if you're a Bills fan, Mitch Morse, center, leaving the game, clearly kind of slowed down their offense a little bit. Concussion, we'll see what that means for the Bills' O-line. Number 2, you've asked for it, you're getting it. Bill Belichick versus Tom Brady, legacy update. I can't think of a better week to do it. We needed more data. It's been about a year, I think, since we've done this. We're still crunching the numbers. I'd hate to make an error with a small sample size for these two. Okay. How about your Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Up 17-0 on Cincinnati. They've got their defensive secondary back, and you're like, wait, is Tampa going to find a way to be kind of like, hey, I don't love you don't want to play in the playoffs. For the most part, you don't want to play a lot of teams that are in the playoffs because they're good. They made the playoffs. And we'll pick some weird team that's like a 5, 6, or 7 seed. Be like, they're going to be kind of a tough out. Like, why? Because they won 2 of their last 3, and there's like a defensive lineman you like now. All of a sudden, all right, back to this. Stay on target. Up 17-0. You're kind of like, wait, I thought everybody liked Cincinnati. How's this happening? And then these were the possessions in order after being up 17-zip. A 4th-and-1 punt, which technically isn't a turnover, but boy, was this a harbinger, huh? You like that? I like words very ardently. It's a snap to the up man who apparently didn't know that they were doing it. Then you've got an interception. Then you get a fumble with Brady on a handoff, and then just a fumble get blasted, then an interception where he got blasted. So over the course of 15 plays, it's 4 turnovers and on downs, but the punt kind of felt like a turnover because it's a short field. If you want to take it out even further, the 4 turnovers, interception, fumble, interception, those were over 11 plays. Brady had 4 turnovers through 11 games. He had 4 through 11 plays. The first 27 plays Cincinnati ran in the second half were in Tampa Bay territory. I don't even know. That has to be close to a record, right? If it isn't. So since he's your 3 seed, they're 10-4. They've won 6 in a row. We all like them. I would take Jamar Chase over any other receiver in the NFL. Of the elite guys, he's the toughest. I'll hear arguments for Parker, for JJ, for Diggs, for Tyreek Hill. I don't like saying JJ, but I'll just say Justin Jefferson. I might be wrong on that. We'll ask Ben Solak about that a little bit later. All right. So that's the Brady part of it. Not great, Bob. How's he going to be number 1 in the legacy rankings? Well, did you see the Pats game yesterday? The Pats, where it looked like the Raiders were now going to blow their 5th double-digit lead of the season. This is number 3, by the way. The Pats offense, which, I don't know, Pats fans, you have fun watching this team on offense? The sad thing is like my talent void argument that I've made here throughout the season about I still think New England's the least talented team in the AFC East, but they're starting to develop some of the guys, some of their defensive linemen. They got Barmore back, who I think is terrific. Jones, the corner. Like, they're starting to develop some of those guys. And then on the other side of it, you're watching this offense being like, what are they doing? And they're also just making like uncharacteristic mistakes for a team throughout all of this run that, Arizona, they got kind of lucky. And it was just all these things. You're like, what do I do with them? Because they're good enough to, like, you have to be worried or you have to be prepared to play them, which is kind of the case for almost every NFL team. But then they're going to come back and win this game against Vegas. And now you're starting to feel bad for Vegas all over again. Then Carlson catches the touchdown. I thought his toe was clearly out. I can kind of understand that on the replay. They felt like it wasn't clear enough to change the call. Again, submission 1012. Why replay's fucking stupid because we all want it and then we get it and then it still doesn't solve everything. So let's just stop wasting time and get rid of all of it. No one agrees with me on that one. So the game is tied. 3rd and 10, New England's own 45. They run Ramondre Stevenson up the middle, who goes 23 yards. And then he laterals it to Jacoby Myers. Let me tell you something about the lateral in football. Once the first guy does it, everybody wants to do it. It's kind of like a chant at a wedding. I was listening to Smartless. I think it was the one with Steve Carell. They were talking about this comedian writer, H. John Benjamin. You may know him as the voice of Archer and many other things. I think he's hysterical. I love everything he does. I think I do. I don't know. Maybe there's some stuff he's done that sucks. I'm not associated with that stuff. So apparently there was a story that they were telling where there was a wedding and it was a bunch of actors, a bunch of comedians, writers, and H. John Benjamin was there with some other people. And the groom starts going through these, changing the vows. And he starts crying. And it's serious. Like, he's crying. It's the happiest day of his life. Fulfilling. I forget who was getting married. And apparently H. John Benjamin just started chanting, cry, 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 cry. Trying to do his voice. Not quite there yet. everybody started chanting. Well, maybe not everybody. Probably older women weren't doing it. Other people, comedians, started chanting cry. When a chant gets going, everybody wants in on a chant. The lateral is the chant NFL play. So once Jacoby gets it, he's like, we're fucking doing this. It's on. And then he, in a tie game, which I've never, ever seen before, decides to lateral it back, to throw the ball back to the middle of the field to that game breaker juke stick of a player, Mac Jones, who Chandler Jones grabs it, trucks Mac Jones. Somebody suggested he was trying to take a charge. Game blouses. So what does that mean? Well, it means I have to come up with a Bill Tom ranking after this week. I know what you're thinking. What's worse than that, right? What's worse than that? Have you ever seen an ending like that? Thank God I don't care about the outcome of Pats games anymore. I would have been off the rails till Wednesday. But let me ask you this. Can you imagine being a Pats opponent coming up the playoffs this year, or maybe even next year if they don't make it into the playoffs? In the back of your head, be like, this team will fucking lateral in a tie game. Imagine the reps you will use in practice and preparation for this kind of stuff that nobody else is doing. That's why the legacy ranking update has Bill 1 and Tom 2. Number 4, Vikings comeback. 33-0 at halftime equals a 39-36 win. To be fair, when it's 33-0, it's really 4.8-0. Doesn't seem as big of a comeback, does it? Bills come back in 93. I remember that one. High school, 35-3. They come back, beat Houston, the Oilers back then. I know exactly where I was for that game. It's one of those games I'll never forget. And the same case here, except I did change the channel to watch a little Zags Bama. Check out that freshman Brandon Miller, by the way, for Alabama. The Colts offense hadn't really done much. No one believes me. I don't care. When it was 28-3 Atlanta, New England in the Super Bowl, watching that game, I was like, the weird thing is I don't feel like New England is out of this. I really felt that at the time. I really did. This one felt a little different because everybody was so mad at the Vikings, right? I want to ask Solik about this too. Everybody was like, yeah, we knew the Vikings sucked. Good. Enough of this. Enough of you and your good one-loss record. Remember the Dallas game? You guys aren't that good. And they come back. It's the biggest history. It's the biggest comeback in NFL history. Yes, I did change the channel, but it wasn't nearly as bad as my World Cup move. We're up 2-0 with Argentina. I'm like, okay, I got shit to do. I sat and watched football and basketball all day yesterday. I watched basketball Friday night. You got to get out of the house, man. You got to go do something. And next thing I know, I'm on an elliptical watching Extra Time at the gym because I was afraid I was going to sit at home and watch American football after football all morning long. So I did change the channel on the Vikings for a bit, then came back to it because I was like, wait, they're coming back in this game. I think I regret the World Cup one a little bit more, but that's my own thing. All right, finally, number 5. I looked at the playoff seeding stuff this morning versus last year because we're always looking at which teams are we going to switch out because every year it basically comes down to half the teams cycle out from the year before. All right, the Bills, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Tennessee, those are your top 4 seeds as of today, which all made the playoffs last year. Behind them, Baltimore, hanging on, the Chargers, and Miami. Now, if you go back to last year, you go, well, those teams are actually decent last year. Baltimore 8-9, the Chargers 9-8, Miami was 9-8. Let's look at the NFC. The top 4 seeds right now, the top 5 seeds right now, Philadelphia, Minnesota, San Francisco, Tampa Bay, and Dallas. All right. Philly made it. San Francisco made it. Tampa made it. Dallas made it. Minnesota did not, but they were 8-9. So it's another 8-9 team. So basically every team I've mentioned so far until we get to the bottom 2 teams in the NFC, we're all in the mix or in the playoffs. The Giants are the real story of the absolute turnaround so far based on projections, because they're a 6 seed today, 4-13 last year. And Washington, who was sneaky kind of a pain in the ass last year, 7-10. So not a massive turnaround. The team that's missing, Green Bay, 13-4 last year, 1 seed out of the playoffs. They stink. So what do we learn here? A couple things. Green Bay sucks. And the turnover of playoff teams, at least right now, isn't looking as severe as it has in other seasons. But it also speaks to what this league is. And as great as the results have been, I've always kind of struggled with, wait, how much fun am I really having? How much does this really matter? How much of this really means something? Because you can talk about culture and 21 personnel and passing on first down and revamping your scouting department and having a new ownership group that completely buys in your culture and T-shirts and signs and all this stuff. When the reality is you may have been a team that didn't recover as many fumbles last year as you did this year. And that's the only difference. And that's why you're in the playoffs and buy into your own stuff. And I never know if that makes the game great or actually not as impressive. Although these last few weeks have been great.